Ever wish you could, like, I don't know, get inside the head of someone wildly successful? See how they tick?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing today, sort of. We're taking a deep dive into John C. Maxwell's How Successful People Think to unpack, the thought processes, the strategies that lead to extraordinary results.
And the great thing is Maxwell doesn't just focus on like CEOs and entrepreneurs.
Right.
These principles, they're universal, whether you're, I don't know, aiming for a promotion, want to master a new skill, or just trying to live with more intention.
It's about reaching your full potential, whatever that looks like for you. And the best part, Maxwell says good thinking, it's not some like magical gift,
Right.
It's a skill. Anyone can learn it.
Absolutely. He gives this really clear 5-step process to cultivate that skill. He's all about that consistent effort, more so than just raw talent. You're actively shaping your thinking, not just hoping for the best.
So it's like step one is feeding your mind, right?
Yeah.
Expose yourself to good stuff. We're talking books, insightful conversations.
Ooh, maybe even a podcast or two.
Exactly. It's like that saying, you are what you eat, but for your mind.
It really is. You become the average of the information you consume. You know what I mean? So choose wisely.
Totally. And step two builds on that. Surround yourself with other thinkers. Iron sharpens iron, but for your brain.
I love that.
Find those mentors, have engaging conversations, people who challenge you.
Maxwell takes it a step further, though. He's big on environment, like physically where you think best. He believes in having these designated thinking spaces.
Oh yeah, he gets really specific about this.
Doesn't he?
He's got your place to just think, your place to refine those thoughts, your place to bounce them off others, and then the place to finally ground them, where you turn those thoughts into actions.
It's kind of cool, right? Because it acknowledges that, like, our surroundings impact our thinking. Writers have their writing nooks. Well, we need our thinking spots. Where do you do your best thinking?
Oh man, good question. I've noticed a lot of my, breakthroughs happen on walks or in the shower, weirdly enough.
Right.
But Maxwell doesn't just leave us hanging with finding the right spot. He gives us this framework for what to do with those thoughts once we've had them, shaping them, stretching them, and like we said, landing them. He even calls the last stage flying your thoughts, putting them into action.
It's like he's giving us the blueprints for our own, like, internal thought-generating machines.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that takes us to step three, right? Making thinking intentional. It's not enough to just have those shower epiphanies. You have to capture them, refine them, and act on them.
It's true. That's where a lot of people stumble. Great ideas, zero follow-through. Maxwell says ideas have an expiration date. We've got to act on them while they're fresh.
Okay, so we've got this foundation for better thinking, but how do we actually use it? How do successful people approach, specific problems?
That's where it gets really fun. Maxwell dives into all these different thinking styles that set high achievers apart. He's not just saying think big, although he does touch on that. He gives us all these different mental approaches, like a toolbox for different situations.
Ooh, I like that. It's like he's giving us the cheat codes for our brains. So which thinking style are we hacking first?
Let's start with big picture thinking. This is a big one for Maxwell. He says it's crucial for, strong leadership, spotting those opportunities others miss, and just navigating new territory. Think of it like this. You're lost in the woods. Big picture thinkers, they climb the tallest tree, get a view of the whole landscape. That gives them a huge advantage in finding their way out.
So instead of getting lost in the details, you're stepping back, seeing the whole forest, not just the trees. That makes sense for leadership, for sure, even entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to, everyday life?
It's about understanding the context of your decisions. Let's say you're thinking about a career change, right? Big picture thinker wouldn't just look at the job offer on the table. They're thinking long-term goals, family life, even how it impacts their community.
They're playing chess, not checkers. Thinking several moves ahead and anticipating those ripple effects.
Exactly. But as important as big picture thinking is, we gotta zoom back in sometimes. That's where focused thinking comes in.
Yes. Laser focus.
Maxwell's a huge proponent of it. He says it's essential for productivity, for really gaining a deep understanding in any field.
We've all heard focus is key a million times. But honestly, with all the distractions these days, easier said than done. So how do we actually cultivate that? Laser focus.
He's really big on figuring out your peak performance times, those hours when your mind is sharpest, and then structure your day around them.
So if you're a morning person, schedule those tough tasks for the AM.
Exactly. Work with your natural rhythms, not against them. He's also a big fan of single tasking.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm the queen of multitasking, or at least I try to be.
Right, but in reality, our brains just aren't wired to juggle multiple complex things at once.
It's like my brain is a browser with 20 tabs open sometimes.
Hmm.
Exhausting and not very effective.
Exactly. Focused thinking is about shutting those tabs down, giving your full attention to one thing at a time. There are even specific techniques for this, like the Pomodoro technique. Ever heard of it?
I have. It's like interval training, but for your brain, right?
Exactly. Short bursts of focused work with breaks in between. Really effective. So we've got the expansive view with big picture thinking, the laser-like focus. What else?
Yeah. What other mental tools are in Maxwell's toolbox?
Well, he reminds us that success isn't always about sticking to the plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about embracing the unknown. And that's where possibility thinking comes in.
Possibility thinking. Ooh, I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
It's about pushing past those perceived limits, challenging assumptions, believing in the what if. He gives the example of George Lucas creating Star Wars. Back then, the special effects he wanted, they were unheard of.
People probably told him it was impossible.
Exactly, but he dared to imagine it. That unwavering belief, that's a possibility thinker.
It's like having that internal compass, always pointing towards what could be, instead of getting stuck on what is. Powerful stuff.
It really is. And it connects to another one of his big ones, creative thinking. Maxwell truly believes everyone has that potential. It's not about being like the next Picasso. It's about that mindset that embraces new ideas, makes connections where you wouldn't expect them.
So how do we tap into that? How do we train our brains to make those leaps?
He's a big advocate for nurturing curiosity. He talks about Leonardo da Vinci, talk about a creative thinker, painting, sculpting, engineering, anatomy, you name it.
Da Vinci, now that's a polymath.
Yeah.
Is Maxwell saying we all need to be Renaissance men and women?
Not necessarily, but he highlights how Da Vinci's wide-ranging interests, they fueled his creativity. Exposing yourself to new experiences, things outside your comfort zone, it can spark those aha moments.
So be a student of the world, always learning, always exploring. Makes sense. But what about when we need to, bring those big creative ideas back down to earth? You have to be realistic too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And Maxwell addresses that head on with realistic thinking. This isn't about being pessimistic, it's about being pragmatic.
So balancing that anything is possible
Yeah.
with a dose of here's what it'll take, practicality.
Exactly. He uses the example of, believe it or not, the security prep for the Super Bowl after 9/11.
Wow, yeah.
They had to balance the excitement of this huge event with, very real safety concerns. It wasn't about letting fear dictate everything. It was about acknowledging risks and planning for them.
That's a great example. So realistic thinking, it's about being prepared for the worst, even while you're striving for the best, not letting fear paralyze you.
Right. And sometimes being realistic means taking a step back to reflect, which leads us to another thinking style.
So it's like finding that middle ground, not getting swept away by blind optimism, but not letting fear call the shots either.
Exactly. And sometimes, being realistic means taking a step back, reflecting, which leads us to another one of Maxwell's thinking styles, reflective thinking.
Okay, yeah. I feel like in our go, go, go world, we don't always make time for that.
It's true. We rush from one thing to the next, no time to process. Reflective thinking is like hitting the pause button, taking stock of, what worked, what didn't. Those lessons learned are so valuable.
It's like that saying, experience is the best teacher. But sometimes you got to repeat the class a few times. Reflective thinking is making sure you actually learn from it, right?
Yes. Turning those experiences into wisdom. I even find myself doing this with my kids. After every vacation, I'll ask them, what did you learn? Simple question, but it gets them thinking.
Building that internal library of wisdom. I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got all these awesome thinking styles, right? But sometimes, even with the best intentions, we get stuck. Like, how do we break free from those old thinking patterns, especially the ones that aren't serving us?
That's where one of Maxwell's most interesting, I think, ideas comes in. He calls it questioning popular thinking.
Oh, okay. Explain that one.
So just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean it's the right choice.
Oh, I know this trap well. Everyone's jumping on this bandwagon, so you think you have to too.
Exactly. Like, think about credit card debt. So many people get stuck there because it's the norm. But popular thinking, it often prioritizes convenience, fitting in, over what's actually best in the long run.
So questioning popular thinking, it's about thinking for yourself, not blindly following the crowd.
Yes, having the courage to forge your own path. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to others, because Maxwell also talks about the power of shared thinking.
Makes sense. Two heads are better than one and all that.
Exactly. He's all about collaboration, especially for those big challenges or when you really need fresh ideas. He
Mhm.
actually uses himself as an example. Early in his career, he was always seeking out mentors, people who could offer a different perspective.
He knew he couldn't do it all alone.
Right. Shared thinking, it's a reminder that we need that support system, those different viewpoints. And that ties into another great concept, unselfish thinking.
Okay, so this is more than just like donating to charity.
It's bigger than that. It's about realizing that when we focus on adding value to others, that's where we find real fulfillment. And you build a legacy, you know?
It's not about what you get, it's about what you give.
Yes.
So,
Maxwell tells this really moving story about the aftermath of 9/11. He was so touched by the outpouring of support, especially this event he was part of. America Prays. They raised millions for the victims. It just showed the power of unselfish thinking.
wow, that's amazing.
It reminds us that even small acts of kindness, they can have a huge ripple effect.
So powerful. Okay, we've covered so much ground today. We've still got one more of Maxwell's thinking styles to go, right?
We do. And he calls this one bottom line thinking. Now, before you think it's all about profits and spreadsheets,
Yeah, I was going to say.
it's broader than that. It's about getting clear on your objectives, whatever they are, and making sure your decisions align with those goals.
So whether you're a business owner trying to increase revenue or just someone who wants to, I don't know, be healthier, it's about having that clarity.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
about cutting through the noise, focusing on what matters. He gives this great example, Frances Hesselbein. She totally turned around the Girl Scouts by focusing on their core mission, helping girls reach their full potential.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
It's proof that bottom line thinking, it's not just about short-term gains, it's about creating something that lasts.
I love that. Okay, so we've taken a deep dive into John C. Maxwell's How Successful People Think. It's like we've unlocked this treasure chest of mental tools and strategies, things we can use to achieve some pretty incredible results.
It has been a joy exploring this with you. And remember, you don't have to do everything at once, right? Pick one or two of these thinking styles that resonate and start practicing them.
Even small changes can make a huge difference over time. So what resonated most with you today? What one thing will you start doing differently? We want to hear from you. Let us know. And until next time, happy thinking.